Welcome to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success. I'm also excited to share my book, Straight from the Admissions Office, a review of my biggest takeaways from the first few hundred podcast episodes. It's packed with direct insights from admissions professionals and practical tips to help students and their families navigate the college admissions process. You can find all of the information in the show notes. Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome Katelyn Lee from New York as part of this series where I'm interviewing current college students who have completed at least 1 year. And it's an extra special episode because Katelyn is also a student athlete. I'll let her tell you where she's playing and what sport she's playing. Katelyn, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's an honor and pleasure, Katelyn. So let's start with a quick introduction. Where are you from? What year are you entering at Columbia? And what sport do you play?
So I am from Syosset in Long Island, New York, and I'm a current sophomore at Columbia University, where I play on the women's lacrosse team there.
Fantastic. And looking back at high school, when did you first start thinking seriously about the college search process?
Yeah, so for me, I think I started a little bit later than normal student athletes because I picked up lacrosse in fifth grade, which is a little bit later than people normally start their sports, but I think it was around freshman year of high school when I fully committed myself to athletics and decided that I want to continue it at the collegiate level. And that's really when I kind of dug my heels in the ground and worked super hard, started attending prospect camps and getting into recruitment. And that's where my path kind of took off.
Well, it definitely took off. You're playing lacrosse at Columbia University, one of the great colleges in the country. So, Katelyn, can you walk us through your lacrosse recruitment process? How early, again, did it start in terms of the process itself, talking to coaches at Columbia and other colleges? And what role did club or even your high school coaches play?
Yeah. So, like I said, I did start a little bit later. So, I think for me, there was definitely a learning curve in that I didn't really know what I was getting into at first. All I knew was that I wanted to play lacrosse. So, I think reaching out to a lot of people, my club coach and my high school coach was super, super helpful in that not only did they facilitate communication between the college coaches and I before September 1st, of my junior year, which is when you're officially allowed to talk to college coaches. But they were super helpful in just providing me with resources and giving me advice on what to do, when to email, what to say to coaches, what camps to attend. For me, the recruiting process was something that I actually really enjoyed. It helped me learn a lot about different colleges and different schools, and along with that, about myself and learning what I like and what I don't like, both in athletics, but also in the school culture and just different aspects of the schools in general.
Well, that's great. Well, we have a lot of student athletes or aspiring student athletes that are listening. So, in terms of the camps to attend or any other advice for current high school students who play lacrosse, what advice would you give to those students?
I would say to reach out and really be active in communicating with coaches. I think that a lot of times people can assume that they're not good enough for a certain school or that it might be a reach, but I think that being really persistent and emailing them and showing continued interest goes a long way. And one other thing I think, especially for aspiring athletes, is that you should attend prospect camps for the specific school that you're interested in. For me, Columbia was my dream school about a year leading up to September 1st of my junior year. So I attended three of their individual prospect camps where it's just at that specific school. And I think because of that, the coaches knew that I was very interested in the school. And then they felt comfortable showing me interest because they knew that it was a reciprocated relationship. And so I think because of that transparency that I have with them, we were really able to take our relationship to the next level. And then eventually I got to go on the official visit and I received the offer and then I officially committed there.
Well, that's great insight. And in addition to all of that, Caitlin, anything else that families should really know about in terms of timelines, requirements, or any other expectations? In other words, how did being a recruited athlete shape your admissions journey?
I would say that being a student athlete definitely is no joke in that I missed out on a lot of things in the summers in participating in these CrossFit camps and just training in general to prepare myself to be good enough to get to that next level. So I think that you do have to make some sacrifices in that I didn't get to go to a lot of summer camps or hang out with my friends that much in the summertime. So there's definitely that time commitment. But I would say that if it's something you truly love, pursue it because for me, it's a sport that I can't imagine my life without. And the people that I've met through it, the values that I've learned through it, it's just indispensable to my career and my life in general.
Well, that's great. And in some of my conversations, some people advise that it's very important as a student athlete to find the right athletic fit, but also the right academic fit, right? Because although you're going to spend a lot of time on the athletic field, you also have to take care of your academics. So, why Columbia? I know that you touched upon this already, but why Columbia? What stood out to you during the recruitment that made you feel it was really the right fit, both as a student athlete and, of course, academically?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up that question because I actually feel like Columbia is the perfect place for me because of the fact that if you took away lacrosse at the end of the day, I would still love being here. And that's another thing that I think is really important is that as a student athlete, you have to kind of separate your sport from the school and ensure that you love the school for what it is and not just because you're playing the sport there. So for me, I would say the biggest thing is that I am very interested in neuroscience and I'm on the pre-med track. However, because of labs and different rigorous courses, a lot of schools frown upon pre-med majors because they think that it takes away from the sport and that you won't have as much time to invest into training and into that sport, and that time would be spent studying or working on your specific major. But my coach and at Columbia, she really pushed me to pursue whatever I want. So there's no sort of requirement or limitation on the classes you can take or the major that you can have, which I definitely can say is unique about Columbia. I know a lot of other schools that I was looking at and just schools in general kind of restrict you on that. So that was one of the main factors for me. And then about Columbia in general, I love that there's this dual nature about it in, first of all, the city and the campus. I think that Columbia is super special in that we're in such a unique location. We're in New York City and we have all the opportunities and the benefits of being in such a bustling area. But at the same time, we do have an enclosed campus. So when you're on campus, you don't have to feel like you're in a chaotic, hectic city. You can spend an afternoon sitting on the lawns, basking in the sun, and like reading a book, and you get that sense of serene peacefulness. Whereas if you want to just step out of campus for a second and take the subway down to Times Square, you could totally do that. So I get the best of both worlds in that sense.
Absolutely. And of course, being in New York City, it really is a thriving city for sure. And so, Caitlin, you talked about some of the other schools, and I'm not asking you to mention the other schools, but you talked about how you felt restricted. Could you just elaborate a little bit more in terms of what types of things should student athletes look for during their college search related to what you were explaining?
So for me, from a very young age, I knew that I wanted to be pre-med. That was no negotiations, no sort of leniency. So when I was talking to the schools, that was something I brought up and something that I think that student athletes should definitely think through before committing to their school. And I was talking to a couple other Ivy Leagues who were not as lenient in majors. They wanted you they didn't necessarily pick out your majors. However, they would lean against certain ones and say that the time commitment for that is a lot, and that coupled with the athletics might be a little too much for you to handle. And so I took that as a sign that maybe it wasn't the place for me. And it's also important to get to know the academic resources provided by the athletics facilities because at Columbia, we're offered a bunch of different things, such as free tutoring sessions 2 times a week for 2 different classes. And we have this program called Success Through Wellbeing, and they send emails and newsletters every week about different opportunities available for you for your major, for what you want to pursue. They will check in with you. You can make calls with them. It's very interactive and they're super supportive in building up your career, which I think is really important because at the end of the day, love my sport, but my career is not going to just be lacrosse later on. So I think that Columbia does a really nice job at preparing you for the professional career after college.
Well, that's a great point to look at a school not only for its location, its size, and all of those things that are very important in terms of how far it is from home and how large it is and what have you, but also how are they supporting you while you're there for the 4 years and even beyond in terms of setting you up for a career path? Because at some point in time, lacrosse is not going to become your full-time job, I would imagine. And so it's very important to look at all of those things. So that's great insight. And Katelyn, did you work with a school counselor, private counselor, or manage the process on your own? And how did that support influence your overall journey?
Well, I think because of the fact that the recruiting process was earlier than the normal timeline, I didn't necessarily work with a counselor like most traditional students would. But as I mentioned before, my club coach and my high school coach acted almost like a counselor in that sense. They are so familiar with the recruiting process and have done it so many times that when it came my turn, they were very experienced and kind of shared that wisdom with me. And then later on, once I verbally committed to Columbia, I did use my school counselor in creating my application, working on the Common App, and figuring all of that out. But that was a little bit later.
So, could you elaborate on that? Because you were a recruited athlete, but of course, you weren't yet admitted to Columbia University. So, what are the nuances? What are the things that student athletes should consider during that process?
So it can be a little confusing in that after I committed, it was a verbal commitment. So there wasn't any pen to paper signing official. However, they do honor these, and that I knew for sure that I was secure in my position and that I would be attending Columbia to play lacrosse. The only thing is that you still have to apply to that school and be officially accepted. So, at least for women's lacrosse, the way that we work is you have that initial date where you commit to that school. For me, it was September 22nd of my junior year of high school. And then once that happened, you have your life and you kind of go throughout high school. And then senior year, beginning of senior year, my coach reached out to the class of recruits and I and told us that we had to apply for a likely letter. So with that, we would have to send all of our grades, our extracurriculars, all of that stuff to the admissions board. And they basically run through it, make sure everything's good, give us a thumbs up, and they approve us in that they say that they're good to go, you pass the pre-read, and you can apply to the school. So then I applied early decision to Columbia, and that's when I did the actual application that all other students do also. And when I applied there, they again give you a little bit of reassurance in that my coach is in communication with the admissions committee and they ensure that everything's still looking good. There's nothing I have to change, different classes I have to take. And once that's fully processed out, then I got my official acceptance when all the early decisions came out.
Well, that's great insight. And I'm just curious. So you're verbally committed to Columbia. Are you permitted to verbally commit somewhere else in the event that you don't get admitted to a school that you're really wanting to go to?
Yeah, so that's definitely another part of it. I have a bunch of friends who have gone through that process. I can't say that I'm super familiar with it because I knew that for me, once I committed to Columbia, it was a done deal. But it's definitely possible after you verbally commit, you are allowed to talk to other coaches. And if you don't feel like that's the right fit for you, there is that process where you decommit and then you can recommit.
Well, that's awesome. So now that you're in your second year at Columbia University, what surprised you the most once you actually got on campus, either athletically or academically?
I would say that the balance of athletics and academics isn't as daunting as I thought, which I think it's a little crazy for me to be saying that now because if you came to me a year ago today, I probably would not have said the same thing. But now that I'm acclimated to the school and finally have a sense of what I'm doing, I have my schedule down, I know how to get around, I feel like being an athlete and being a student has been honestly such a privilege in that it's taught me time management skills and it's taught me really how to plan and schedule everything. And I just think that in high school, I wasn't necessarily sure how it would pan out. And I was a little bit stressed about managing it all. But I think that that's the thing that surprised me the most is your ability to adapt to the situation given and just especially at this place, I think my teammates are so supportive, my coaches are so supportive, and just Columbia in general has been so supportive that I've really been able to find my own and find that balance that I wanted.
Well, that's terrific. And listen, I happen to know that you're a very small person who has an amazing family, and you talked about all of the help from your coaches and then eventually your school counselor. But Caitlin, what's one thing you wish you had known about being a student athlete while you were in high school since you're now in college?
One thing that I wish I knew about being a student athlete is the time commitment that you have for practices and games and everything else that comes with it. I previously talked about how I really gotten used to the balance between academics and athletics, but I also don't want to undermine the grind that it is. I think that besides for just practice and everything, you also have to account for the time that it takes to get to your classes after practice and to find a time to eat or to study once you get back from a 7 p.m. practice. And I think that's a blessing and a curse in that it's really taught me, as I said, time management skills and adapting to this school. But it definitely can be a challenge in that it can be super stressful and daunting at first, but once you get used to it, I think it's something that I really appreciate and value that I'm able to take on and handle now.
Well, that's terrific, Caitlin. Thank you. And if you could go back and redo the college search, what's something you would have done differently or considered more carefully?
For me, I think that one little flaw about my recruiting process was that I felt a bit rushed. And I think I can relate to a lot of student athletes, and a lot of my teammates and other friends who went through the same process said the same thing, in that you compare yourself a little bit to everyone else, especially with the presence of social media now. September 1st hits, and you see this girl committed here and this other girl committed here, and you just want to know where am I going to go? And because of that, I think everyone feels a little bit more rushed. I want to commit. I want to commit. I want to put out the post, and I want everyone to be able to see that I just committed to this school. But I think it's very important to focus on yourself and block out all of that background noise and just really recognize what you want, what's best for you, not for anyone else around you, or don't think about the judgments or what other people will think about it. I think that coming to Columbia was an amazing decision for me and not for anyone else, not even my parents or friends. I really allowed it to be a decision that reflected what I wanted and what I was looking for in a school. And I think For me, that's the best success you can get.
Well, that's terrific. And what's something you wish someone had told you during your own college search, Caitlin, that you only understand now after having gone through it?
Yeah, so this actually goes really well off of what I just said, but I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give is be yourself because once you get to that college, all those people who you were talking with before, or people who were looking to see where you were going to go, they disappear, and it's just you for the next 4 years at that college. So I think really taking into perspective what you want, your interests, and finding a school that you can envision yourself at is so, so, so important. I really found a school that I think fits me not only athletically, but academically and socially. And it's been a really great blessing, but I think you can only do that if you look inward and you block out everything else that's going outside.
Well, that's great advice. And you truly are an ambassador for Columbia University. Caitlin, what advice would you give to high school students considering Columbia University specifically?
I would say that they should really take into consideration coming onto campus and getting a feel for Columbia in general. Because I will say, before I was fully invested in Columbia, I really didn't expect what I got. In that Columbia's campus is so different from the city. And when you first think of Columbia, everyone kind of tends to assume, oh, it's New York City, the city is your campus. But I feel like that's almost the opposite from my experience. The campus is such a beautiful green area, and I feel like I genuinely get that two-in-one deal where I get the campus, I get this nice little community and environment that's secluded from the rest of the city. And I feel like we have really great culture here as well because of that, in that we're enclosed, in that we have this tight knit community, and you can meet everyone in the undergraduate community. But I also do feel like when you get on campus, you can see how close in proximity you are to the rest of the city as well. So you have those four walls that kind of close you into the campus that I really enjoy. But once you step on campus, you also get that feeling of, wow, there's this whole world going on just one step outside.
Well, that's terrific, Caitlin. And this has been an awesome conversation. Unfortunately, it does lead us to that last question. Now, you've given a lot of advice, but what's your biggest piece of advice for high school students and families just starting their college journeys?
I would say that my biggest piece of advice is not to compare yourself and really just focus in on what you're doing and what you want to do. I think I've said this a bunch of times, but it's because it's really true to me. And I feel like it's been so helpful in my process. And I think holds true to everyone else who have gone through the college process and are on the other side now, is that you have a lot of people around you who are going through the same thing. And it can be super, super stressful. But at the end of the day, I think that if you focus on your interests and focus on what you want to succeed in and what you want to do in life, when you find that college that reflects that for you, you know it. So I think rather than being indecisive and looking around and trying to see what other people think of this college, or even sometimes I think students can look to their parents. Like their parents will say, this college sounds good, or I could see you here. I think even there, you should take that moment and just think, that's great that you like that, but do I like that too?
Well, that's great advice. Definitely listen to your parents, but ultimately, students, try to make your own decision, I think is what Kaylin is saying there. So that's awesome. And this has been terrific, Kaylin. I really can't thank you enough for being here. You're a natural. Your time, your insights, your expertise in terms of the college recruitment process is going to help so many students. And I'm so happy that, you came on today. I hope to have you again in the future, Caitlin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care, all, and best wishes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP. Thank you for listening to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success.